stood here 3 weeks ago. Actually, I was over there, but now I'm here. 3 weeks ago. And I really don't even know, quite frankly, if I'm the same person that stood here 3 weeks ago, that I stand here today. I don't even know where to begin because I just have so much that I want to share. So over the 6 years that I've been here, what I've realized is that my greatest gift to all of you that I can share is my life, right? So living from a spiritual perspective is a practice that I'm trying to model for you through whatever occurs on my path, the good, the hard, the extremely difficult, the amazing. I try to be transparent so that perhaps my experiences can help you in some way as you live your own life path stuff, right? So I want to begin by sharing one of the experiences that I had over the past 3 weeks, and that was the experience that I had with the death of my beloved aunt. So to remind you, or to catch you up if you weren't here 3 weeks ago, my sweet Aunt Bev died. And I left after the service here 3 weeks ago and flew to Kansas City to be with my family and to officiate her celebration of life. So her memorial was the next day, on that Monday. So I was in this whirlwind of tears and laughter and stories and sharing stuff. And it started the evening that she died, the Wednesday prior, and it continued all the way through my trip there. So her cousin, her sons, my cousins, had asked me to put together her service. So I had these long, deeply personal conversations with many of her friends and our family members to kind of try to figure out how to fully portray her life in this service. So after I left here, I spent about 48 hours immersed in love and loss. And that Kansas City trip also contained a profound gift for me, which was alone and uninterrupted time with my mom. So we were able to spend about 17 hours together talking and processing and grieving before I flew back home. And then after I left my mom, which was this big, deep, opening heart thing, I had to kind of put my grief on a shelf because the following day, I flew to Africa with 10 friends to have this adventure that we had been planning for over a year. So as you can imagine, it's been this roller coaster of life emotions for me. Through the deepest sorrow that I've ever felt to the wildest joy and amazement that I've ever felt, all mushed together in one heart, one open heart. It was paradoxical for me. But as it happens, finding myself submerged in a paradox was perfect, because that's exactly what we're supposed to be talking about this month as we start this month of October. A paradox, a paradox. It's a word that comes from the Greek, para, meaning contrary to, and doxa, meaning opinion. So contrary opinions, contrary concepts. Brene Brown defines paradox as the appearance of contradiction between two related components. So basically a paradox is when two seemingly contradictory things are true at the same time. So I have spent the last 3 weeks in a paradox within myself. Am I in sorrow or am I in joy? Am I hurting or am I celebrating? Am I excited to do this travel or is my heart just kind of too broken to enjoy it? But somehow Spirit gave me this strength because something within me stretched wide enough to embrace the reality that both were true at the same time. I didn't need to be just one. Two things were happening for me, and therein lies our lesson today. So as you can imagine, I just want to talk about Africa. I just want to talk about Africa. Terry and I took this amazing trip with our friends, and there's so many moments that we had and memories that we created that I would love to share with you. So maybe over the course of several lessons, I'll share different little bits of it, but see what I can weave in. But before I left, one of my fellow ministers who knew that I had just gone through this loss this memorial service thing, he encouraged me to try to relax and be fully present and allow Spirit to show itself in all the unique and beautiful ways possible on the trip. Just relax and let Spirit show itself. Man, that was great advice. That was just great advice. Because I was truly wowed by all of it. I allowed myself to be fully present with whatever emotion I was feeling at the time and still be wowed. Terry can tell you there were moments when I just had to stop. I just had to go into the room and just let myself feel all these things that I was still feeling. But everywhere I looked, the energy of life that I call Spirit was really kind of showing off in its magnificent varieties. You know, when we're moving around in the routine of our lives every day here, it's hard to notice. We kind of get numb to the beauty that we see all around us. We forget about the diversity of life and all the forms that we see in our own backyards. But when you're in this other place where things are so very different, we travel and experience new things, we really, something inside of us awakens in that new kind of stimulation that we have around us. And Africa did that for me. So I knew I was coming back to explore this thing called Paradox with all of you. So I was looking for things that I could share to support this theme. And we all, just to clarify, paradoxes, we are familiar with some of them. There are paradoxical statements that you're probably familiar with. I'll share some of them. You have to spend money to make money. If you don't risk anything, you risk everything. Less is more. If I know one thing, it's that I know nothing. This is the beginning of the end. Deep down, you're really shallow. The answer is found in the question. And my favorite one is jumbo shrimp. Right? So paradoxes are just like a natural part of life. However, the human mind, our minds are designed for either or thinking. Right? That evolutionary design was incredibly useful for our ancestors who were running around in places like Africa, because it was important that we were able to quickly tell if the wind is blowing the leaves or is there a predator in the bush that's going to kind of pounce on me, right? So I think I used some of that evolutionary design around all those animals too. But humans quickly learned the helpfulness of categorizing everything, almost at a glance. We categorize. But humans also quickly learn that categorizing anything limits the full experience of a thing. So in spirituality, we're trying to seek this way of returning to our true nature, right? We're faced with several paradoxes to grapple with on this path to greater awareness. So Parker Palmer, he's a Christian writer who's very profound. He's a great teacher. He wrote this: the deeper our faith, the more doubt we must endure. The deeper our hope, the more prone we are to despair. The deeper our love, the more pain its loss will bring. These are a few of the paradoxes we must hold as human beings. So we come to this teaching together to deepen our faith as we walk through our doubts, right? We come to this teaching to deepen our hope as we face a despair in our lives. We come to this teaching to deepen our love so that when we experience the loss of it, we are not alone. We are here together. We walk through these really common paradoxes together as a community. And one central spiritual paradox is this: I am an individual, and I'm also part of the oneness of the all. I'm a spiritual being, but I'm also a human being. In all of my humanness, I want to experience spirit. Annie Lamott, in her book Traveling Mercies, wrote, sometimes when you need to feel the all-embracing nature of God, paradoxically, you need to hang out in ordinariness, in daily ritual and comfort. What she's saying is that God is found in everyday experiences, in the rituals or the routines that keep us comfortable. Spirit is in everything. Spirit's going to be found in these mind-blowing, miraculous things, but paradoxically, Spirit is also found in the quiet of your own living room. Karen Armstrong wrote Islam, A Short History. She wrote a lot about the Islamic faith. She wrote, perhaps the central paradox of the religious life is that it seeks transcendence, a dimension of existence beyond, that goes beyond our mundane lives, but that human beings can only experience this transcendent reality in the earthly physical phenomenon. That is the central paradox of spiritual living. And I think Annie Lamott and Karen Armstrong are saying the same thing. We already have what we are seeking. We're already living amongst what we desire. We are what we are seeking. What we seek is within us and the very lives that we live every day. So I want to dive into the paradox of oneness. So when I first came to spirituality, this was a hard concept for me to understand. Right? Does anybody else grapple with it, this oneness thing? I knew that I was an individual. My life was mine to make. Like my choices were my own to make. The consequences of those choices were mine to face, right? Individualism is an easy one. But when I was taught that we're all one, I balked. Like, that was a paradox that was difficult for me to embrace. Am I my own person, or am I part of the one? And eventually I grasped that I'm both, right? And so are you. We're both. So Africa held an illustration for me that I can share about this idea of oneness. The idea that there's only one life, one source, one God that lives as each of us as individuals. So I was thinking about this as we experienced everything on our safari. So let me paint a picture. So if you're on Facebook with me, you probably saw the photos where we touched elephants, right? We touched elephants. And those elephants were in an orphan sanctuary. And it was a very, very cool experience. And maybe I'm going to talk about that experience separately. But today I want to talk about the actual safari experiences where the animals were wild, out in the wild. Okay, so when we were in Botswana, we stayed in two different safari locations, the Chobe Game Preserve and the Okavango Delta. And in both of those places, we had at least 2 opportunities a day to go out into an untamed area, just out into the wild, if you will. And we could just encounter whatever animals that we encountered purely in the wild. And there were no guarantees that we'd see anything. But we would go out very early in the morning to kind of see what the animals were doing first thing in the morning, kind of how they wake up and start their day. And then we went out again in the afternoon to see how they were kind of finishing up their day and how they moved about as the sun was going down, how they ended their day. And then once we went out at night to kind of see the nocturnal animals, which was kind of cool too. Sometimes we went by boat, sometimes we went on a canoe on the water, but most of the time we were in drives in these Jeep kind of things, these Land Rover kind of vehicles. Life was everywhere we looked. Life with a capital L. The one life was on display everywhere. There was life in the grasses, the bugs, the trees, the wind, the river, and all the different animals. And we could look out across this landscape, and I remember one moment we were looking out and we could see life in an innumerable amount of variety. But the entire time we were looking at one life force expressing as each element that we could see. It was all one. Everything worked together in every moment to create every single moment of perfection, oneness. And this one distinct moment I want to describe. So here we are as humans, and we're sitting in this jeepy thing up on the ridge above the river. And we could see the river down below, and we could see the kind of the plains or what the grasses going forever to the horizon, just land. And in this one picture that we're looking at, there were these couple of lions. There was a variety of antelope kinds of things, and I know there's some of them are named impalas and kudus and stuff, but I don't remember all the names. But anyway, they're out there running around. There's elephants in groups, so we can see. There's crocodiles lying in the sun by the river. Hippos are in the water. And there are a few giraffes like walking on the horizon. And all of this is one view, one moment of perfection that contains so much diversity of life. It was kind of staggering, right? And obviously there's an ecosystem, right, that was being sustained by each element working together. So I was aware that this life energy moved from the water and the plants and the soil. They moved from the water and the soil into the grasses, into the trees, into the plants. And then those things were consumed by the bugs, right? And animals of all sizes were chomping on all of that. And then those bugs and small animals were consumed by birds and animals of greater size, which were then killed by other animals or died natural deaths and returned to the soil and water to start it all over again. It was that circle of life. Not even the poop was wasted. We talked a lot about poop in our lesson about poop. Poop's a part of the puzzle. Circle of life. I had read about this, right? I had seen The Lion King. I had even sung the song. So I almost started to ask you to sing songs. But in Africa, I got it. I got it. If any element was missing, everything would change. Oneness. What happens to one happens to all. Oneness. But paradoxically, each and every element and each creature was an individual out for themselves, out for their own well-being, motivated by their own needs, food, water, shelter, movement, whatever. The lions were just focused on the lion-y stuff, right? The elephant was busy being an elephant. The warthog was doing the whole warthog thing, as ugly as he was. Each animal was both a predator and prey. The plants were both expressing in as themselves, but also serving as food for the creatures. So the fun thing that kept arising for us as individuals, as human beings in this vehicle, in this awareness that each individual species was just doing its own part in the circle of life, well, we were aware as the guides would point out like a dead animal and calmly explain what likely killed it, what other animals had benefited from its demise. You know, we watched this herd of impalas, these antelope things, running for their lives as a lion just walked. The lion was not hunting, but they didn't know that. They were just running. The lion was just walking across the grass in their general direction. But as they were running and the lion was doing too, do we root for the lion or do we root for the impala, right? Both had babies to feed, bellies to fill, individuals, yet somehow part of the oneness. And we felt the need to pick a side, right? So we had to suspend our idea that there were winners and losers in nature. One element's death or destruction was another's life and creation. It was all good. We had to face that. It really is a paradox. The individual and the universal are both supported in the oneness. It was seamless, it was natural, but we grappled with the reality of that and how to accept it. But when we turn our attention away from the animal kingdom and place our focus on humanity, it becomes more difficult to see the naturalness and the goodness of everything that's happening. It's difficult to see ourselves as both an individual and part of the one life, the paradox of all of it. Both are true and both deserve our attention. See, animals don't resist because they don't have our level of consciousness, right? They don't compare themselves to each other, first of all. They don't decide winners or losers. They don't judge themselves or the other species around them. They don't even realize that they're living the paradox, but we do. We do. We resist ourselves, right? We don't see ourselves as the part of something bigger going on. It's hard. I think we can see ourselves as an individual, but even that's hard to find value in because sometimes we can only see a limited perspective of ourselves. We're so busy worrying about our worthiness. Tell me it's not just me, right? Am I smart enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I good enough? You know, do I fit in? Do I belong? Most of us spend all of our time in this end of the spectrum, fretting over the details of our individual life and the twists and turns of it, being our families and the roles that we play. We too are just kind of moving around doing our human stuff, right? Focusing on that every day, trying to survive, trying to thrive and flourish. But at the same time, we are divine, part of the one life. We're human, but we're also spirit, part of the perfection of this moment. If we weren't present, hear me, if you weren't present as your individual self-expression, something would be missing. Think about it. A part of the one evolving human race, every experience we have is valuable. That's a spiritual truth. We're individual and we're part of the wholeness. If we are here, there is a purpose to us being here. And quite frankly, we have the same purpose as each creature, to be our unique selves, to show up and be a part of the vista of life that we are in. Our purpose is to live as lovingly and intentionally as we can, participating in every moment we find ourselves in as beautiful as we can. But it takes a paradox mindset to embrace that bigger truth. The paradox mindset is the ability to hold and consider two seemingly opposite ideas at the same time. And there's great benefit to going through our life with the mental flexibility as a human being and a spiritual being. You're both. So how will this awareness help me as I move forward? Thinking about the animals in Africa, perhaps I can see myself as a part of a bigger picture. You know, I'm one person in a long line of ancestral knowledge and experience. I'm on an evolutionary journey through this lifetime, and every experience I have is meant to grow me in the moment, and in turn, grow the human race. Individually and collectively, my moments matter. Perhaps I can hold on to that idea that there are no winners and losers. They're just simply experiences of learning different things. We kind of talked about that in Sacred Cup this morning. Energy's always taking different forms, and one day, life energy will no longer be in this form. But nothing is wasted. My presence here matters. Your presence here matters. And taking it to another level, a death benefits others that experience it. I can look at my aunt's death and realize that it was a natural part of our family's experience. There were many, many gifts available to everyone touched by her passing. Moments of gratitude, opportunities to forgive, new perspectives, emotional nourishment. The animals taught me that perspective. And I think the biggest lesson I took away from being around all the animals was to grow confidence to just be myself without worrying about how much that looks different to those around me. Every animal left their own tracks. Each had unique appearances and functions. Even animals of the same species were individual expressions and had individual personalities and behaviors. The guides would often tell one from another, like, this is this animal, and this is, they all look like elephants to me. They all look the same, right? But they had observed the animals long enough to recognize individuals. Yet they never ever said, this one is better than that one. There was no rank or comparison. So living a science of mind teaching requires a paradox mindset, because we're constantly pulled in two seemingly opposite directions of seeing all of it as oneness in spirit, while also being confronted with the suffering and brokenness of the world around us, the humanness, if you will, of everything going on. A paradox mindset allows us the freedom to simultaneously hold both of these ideas in our minds without the need to solve a problem. In fact, when you embrace a paradox, there's really no problem to solve. A paradox mindset is key to developing and deepening our spiritual understanding of the world around us, not only in Africa, but right here where we are today. So thank you. Thank you for opening your hearts as you witness my personal lessons of evolution and healing and learning. And as I change and grow, I invite you to come along for the adventure. I can certainly say that I took all of you with me to Kansas City a few weeks ago and to Africa over the past 3 weeks. So thank you for sharing my journey. It's a paradox, and so it is. Yes.